Now I gotta ride or die.
So guys, welcome back to the channel. We are updating you guys on the Cadillac, my 1966 Coupe de Ville. If you did not know, we are building this thing up since me buying it back with a 2JZ from a Mark IV Toyota Supra in it. So yeah, that's what's actually happening here. If you didn't know, this was literally the car that got away. We were able to buy it back a couple of years ago now, a year and a half ago say, and I am so happy to have this back in my life. But updating you guys with what's happening, as you can see, there's parts, there is, as you can see, no engine in it either. You guys may have seen in the last update, the engine was sat in here, but let me get onto that in just a second. Now, just a quick reminder, we are in an active workshop, so there will be noises and stuff behind me. We do not want to pause the guys from building these awesome projects they have in here. So, I would like to show you the 2JZ out of the car. So yes, it has been pulled out because there was many things we had to assess with it being out of the car. Of course, going back to the car, as you can see from this point, the mountings are all done properly. So we actually mounted this in to make sure it cleared everything and everything was all good. And as you can see, the mount points that have been put in for the engine and gearbox are completely good. This meant that the engine was absolutely fine clearance wise. We had the mounts properly. It was sat at a proper cocked angle like they sit in, you know, Supras and Lexus and stuff. So that was absolutely fine. You guys saw that in the recent video. But coming out of the car, we had to take it all out to assess the gearbox and everything in this section. Now, what you won't know is that this is, again, a Toyota Mark IV Supra engine, a non-turbo engine, but this is actually a GS300 gearbox. Now, this meant that we had to change a few internal bits here from a manual swap. So this would have been, this part would have been onto a manual gearbox, and obviously this is an automatic gearbox. This meant that we had to change a few things in here. Things like the flywheel torque converter, of course, it being manual meant that there was a few different things we had to change. It meant that I couldn't actually get the manual box. We weren't manual swapping the Cadillac anyway, but it meant we actually had to change a few things here. So flywheel, torque converter, various bits and bobs, bolts and stuff had to be changed around because we wanted to use the Lexus gearbox so it would sit properly in the Cadillac. We again didn't want to manual swap the Cadillac because I don't want to cut it up that much. This gearbox again goes into the column shift that's in the Cadillac, which is a shout. A few bits for the turbo. Again, this is a non-turbo engine, so there is a few blanks that could be used, which is quite nice. So we actually have just down here the turbo, what is going to be the turbo return pipe straight into that part of the sump there. Now, this is actually a factory hole that has been created. They're usually bunged up here, but they have tapped these bits in and actually tapped into that part of the sump. So that is absolutely fantastic that we were able to find that and use it till its full potential. And enough just here into the back of the engine, of course, with the turbocharger coming in, coming out, all that sort of stuff. That is actually going to be used with this bolt here. That is where we are going to be putting turbo oil feed into the turbocharger itself, coming in there and round and down there. For the engine itself, that's pretty much as far as we're going to go for this minute. It is actually going to go back into the car because we want to assess its starting and stuff. Now that brings me on to the box I have over there, which I'll show you guys in just a second. But we pretty much have everything to actually get this started. Now it's just assembling it back into the car and wiring it properly, making sure everything is as it should, because hopefully this thing will actually run, crank, start and be good. Hopefully. The next update is actually the radiator. Now the physical radiator, this one is from the Cadillac itself, so 1960s Cadillac, and we actually worked out that the engine itself, just sat over there, will actually fit behind this and absolutely perfectly fit with the factory radiator. So that's something that we don't actually have to assess now, and all of the lines and everything coming out of the radiator itself up here can actually go into that engine not too bad, which is such a relief, because of course trying to cut out the front of the car to actually get a different radiator in is going to be a nightmare. nightmare. And again, if I do need another one of these are readily available, so I'm thankfully going to be keeping the factory radiator. But it's just funny that sort of pretty much works with a 2JZ engine. So that's the update with the engine. Again, not too much more to tell you guys other than we're pretty much there to actually physically put this back into the car and try and start get it running, which is a shout. I'm so happy that we've got to that point in the engine, and yeah, it should be back in the not so distant future. Okay, next up is this box that I bought off eBay from a Breaking GS300. This is sort of the final parts we actually need to put everything back in the car. So we have an original GS300 prop. This will, again, as I've already said, mate into the Cadillac. So we're actually going to work with a part of this going into a part of the Cadillac prop, which should work really, really well. Again, that's something that we worked out quite quickly, that was going to work together. The final drive should be okay as well. Again, we will see once it's all in. They've worked it out, I haven't. I'm, again, no professional, we'll say that again. And wiring, so we have an engine ECU and a gearbox ECU going into the car to make everything work. Now, this was something, again, pretty easy to find from a GS300. So again, all parts here are from a Breaking Mark II GS300. And as you can see, they've actually left all of the plugs and stuff on as much as they could, which is, again, a massive shout. It's going to help us really get this in efficiently and quickly into the car. But this was sort of the final part of the puzzle. Didn't want to buy everything straight away when I bought the engine, because I want to make sure the engine and everything was right. But this is pretty much the last pieces of the puzzle ready for it to actually go back into the car. So next up, it is going to be a few weeks of just messing around, trying to get everything wired properly. The engine, again, will go back into the car when it is ready. Everything needs to be sort of right in the car as we speak. I'm not painting the bay yet. I'm not getting, you know, all the wires pulled out like I said in the last video, because I want to make sure that the engine starts and everything is absolutely puckering it before we then again rip the engine back out and actually assess the engine bay and what it looks like. So actually getting this to the point where it's running and actually right, is that, if that makes any sense, will be the next point. Because we've got this far, we've got to the point where we're going to wire everything and start it. That'll be the sort of judgment as to whether this 2J that I bought from a friend's Supra will actually work properly, and it won't need rebuilding. Hopefully the plan is it won't need rebuilding. It, you know, pulls and cranks and it does everything as it should. We'll of course assess, dress up little bits, bolts, various other little bits and bobs when it comes to it. But that's something we're going to do down the line. Of course, getting this car driving in a sense, or at least running, is the whole plan here. That's why we've got to sort of this stage, especially with the wiring. The wiring needs to go in, it needs to be all exact, and then we will know full well if this engine is actually any good, and whether this then again comes back out and we again rebuild this or whatever it needs. It will get done, ready to go back in the final time once we've dressed the bay up and made it all look lovely. Because of course, I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't necessarily want to be wiring all of that into this car with everything that it has with that engine. It just takes time. So we're at a fantastic point at the moment. The whole puzzle is together pretty much. It just needs putting in and wiring correctly, which is again the next stage. We will get that in there, the wiring in there, the prop ready, and it will start. It will be hopefully as good as it can be, considering it's a 1960s car and yeah, a very old 2J. And the last thing I need to show you guys as we pop the interior open is a new starter motor. Now that was actually purchased ready for the starting procedure that we're going to do in the not so distant future, ready for it to go. Very, very excited to actually get that on, make sure it's started, and then just see where we are. Again, I'll update you guys. If there is bad news, it will be bad news. If it's good news, it'll be good news. That's just how it is. If we have to build this engine up again, it is something I want to do maybe at some point, but I just want it running and driving. Next summer, I want to be cruising in this thing with the 2J turbo ready to roll. But we're going to leave today's video there. Thank you so much for watching. Again, Advanced Automotive are absolutely smashing this, so please drop them a like or a follow, whatever you can. And if you ever need custom work, Range Rover stuff, Land Rover stuff, thing to do with cars and just general putting a 2J in a Cadillac, I know that's just the silliest thing you've ever heard, but they can do that. They can pretty much do anything else. So I'm going to leave today's video there. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.